Cool. Okay. Doors disengaged. Okay. No. Okay.
Making it here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I want to thank Armando and everyone that works here at the Perfect Exposure Gallery for hosting us, and to our sponsors for the show, which are Leica, Bloom and Plume, Freestyle, Lomography, Grocery Outlet, and Victoria Wines. They have all been integral to kind of helping us as part of the Black Women Photographers group to get this exhibition together. It's the first show, and I'm still so overwhelmed at how amazing everything looks. So thank you. And here we have today our three beautiful ladies. We have Raven Irabor. She's a Pan-African image maker and curator based between New York and Los Angeles. Her work is informed by passion and culture, art, fashion, and film. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think it's pretty much, that sums it up. I work as a producer, creative director, curator, and I'm getting into directing in the last 2 years. So.
Amazing. Next up we have Adrian. She's an independent curator, writer, and arts editor. She's organised exhibitions for Root Division, Berkeley Art Centre, and USC. Thanks for joining us. Is there anything else you want to add,
I also run my own magazine, Pearls, which I started back in 2017. So I really balance this independent practice of curating, writing, and editing, which has been really, really fun.
Okay. And last up, we have Regina B. Black. She's a Long Beach-based artist working in photography and video. She's a recent graduate from California State University with a BFA in photography. Welcome. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for this amazing discussion we're going to have. And yeah, my work focuses on like intergenerational trauma within our Black communities and how we can mediate that in our daily life.
Great. Unfortunately, Ingrid was not able to join us today. She's had another work commitment, so it's just for us. Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but when I think of like fine art and getting into like the art space, I I found it really overwhelming. It was always kind of geared towards like one group of people, very exclusive, very uninclusive. Can you tell me like how you got into the fine art world? Start with AJ.
So for me, my mother, Donna Ramsey, is an artist, and she raised me and my sister in this really creative environment where we were always doing arts and crafts, and she would always take us to museums. Interestingly enough, in my K-12 education, I really didn't find a big emphasis on art. For example, my high school didn't have AP art history. The art classes I took, I always think it's so funny that I ended up in art, because growing up, I hated going to art class because it just felt very like basic, dry, so like another requirement. It wasn't really like encouraged as something that could be a career. I always kind of heard like negative things about artists and or just art making in general. So I wasn't really geared towards it in that sense. My mom would always encourage it. So I find it very interesting that I ended up in it, and it really got encouraged once I went to college and took my first art history class. And that's when I started learning, oh, there's all these careers in this art world that I just have no idea about. Like sadly, I'm embarrassed to admit, I did not really know what a curator like exactly did until I was maybe 18, taking my art history class, because my teacher was a curator, and she owned a gallery, and she explained, what she did. And so then that was kind of this upward trend of me starting to learn more about the art world and getting more involved in it. So I started out at college at Irabor College in New York. And it just really wasn't for me, so I ended up transferring to the University of Southern California for my undergrad, where I got my PA in art history, and I'm now back getting my MA in curatorial practice. It's been a great experience. And when I started at USC, my junior year, I started working at the California African American Museum, which is in Exhibition Park, right across the street from USC. And that has been a super amazing experience in getting to learn about the museum space. It's the first museum I ever worked at. And so I'd say that first art history class I did take at Sarah Lawrence, and then working at CAM, really both two experiences that helped me meld into that world. But I give all credit to my mother for always encouraging us to like stay creative, even though I was like, I hate art class. And she's like, no, like it's fun. I'm like, is it? So she was right. She's right.
Yeah, it's funny because you say that, because when I went to university, I got stuck with photography, and I absolutely hated it. I was like, why are these numbers 1 to 10? I just couldn't wrap my head around apertures and f-stops and all this stuff, and now I'm a photographer. How about yourself?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd say in high school, but honestly, I've been taking pictures since I was 5, and it didn't really become a passion of mine until high school, and I had my first photo class, and it just kind of changed the game for me. I was the type of person that thought, I'm just going to do community college and get out, like, just get it. I wanted nothing more to do with school after high school. And because budget cuts and everything, they took away the photography class, so I had to take AP 2D after that because I loved it so much. I was like, I need more. That was the thing that inspired me, like, to go to college and pursue a degree in photography, because other than that, I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to deal with any more homework. And from there, I applied to Cal State Long Beach, and that was kind of the end of that. So.
Great. And Raven, like, how did you get into the fine art world?
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to New York City just because it's such a cultural city. Also, my parents are like immigrants. My father's from Nigeria, my mom's from Trinidad. So with that, I like traveled a lot when I was younger. My parents took me to a lot of like cultural institutions, museums when we traveled. So I think that exposed me to the art world, even though traditionally it wasn't like necessarily a path of mine. I started off dancing, so I've always been creative, and I think after college is when I like started being more interested in like the art world specifically. I went to school for television, radio, and film, so always creative, and I still work in the media industry now full time, but being able to figure out how to be more art focused and like media adjacent, and I felt like beforehand I was focused in the media space but art adjacent. So it's been an interesting transition to the art space because it's like as
art space, I think of like really bougie galleries where you walk in, it's dead silent, you feel like you can't, like you've got close to images to kind of explore. Your kind of experience in this is like getting artists into different like what's the word? Kind of like unusual spaces. So like music videos and TV shows. Can you talk us a bit more about how that kind of works?
Yeah, so I would say my first time like curating something was when I was back home. I was part of this like art creative collective called Irabor, and we had an art showcase, and it was just like, okay, like I'm also like a very organized person, so I'm like, all right, we need a theme, we need documents, like making things make sense. And that was my first time really like curating in a more like traditional sense. And then once I started shadowing this curator, Autumn Brian out here, she kind of exposed me to the ways of merging media with art. So she's curated for Insecure, and she's curated at this Black-owned like social club in Culver City. I forget.
Blackbird Collective.
Yes, yes, Blackbird Collective. She's curated at that location, and as a producer full-time, like I've had the opportunity to just see like when we do have campaigns, how can we bring artists into those campaigns? So when I was at Blavity, we were working on a campaign with Sweetie, and we had like, all right, we wanted, I think it was also at McDonald's, like what are some cool artists that can design the McDonald's like packaging for this campaign? So using, again, this media space to really figure out how can we bring artists and creators and amplify them in this more advertising environment, because usually that's where I think like a lot of people get the dollars, is in like the advertising commercial space. So.
Great. How are you looking for your artists? Like, are there specific places that you're going to, or is it just out and about every day you see something you like and then you kind of do a bit more research on that?
I would say it's a mixture of like Instagram and then going to galleries. Like I have folders on Instagram with different artists that I really love. Also just like reading different like articles from like art magazines and things like that and seeing who they're featuring. But I would obviously say Instagram probably is like my biggest place of like finding people that I like, saving them, and then when an opportunity arises, it's like, okay, this person would be great for this or whatever.
Okay. And then Adrian, how do you, because your type of creation is slightly different from Raven's, how do you go about thinking of what to curate, who for, and then looking for artists? So three-part question.
So what to curate, who for, and
artists, like where do you find the artists?
yeah. So I also agree with you. I'll find a lot of people on Instagram, and just also like going to galleries and going to museums, taking note of like a piece that I saw. Or if I'm not able to go to a show, like usually there will be something uploaded online like about it, and I'll try and keep track, or even just asking people. Just asking, your friends who are artists, or just friends in general, like, hey, someone who's maybe doing work like in this arena or whatnot. I found people through that, or just doing that, or reading articles about people. So it's just really just staying in that world and finding it on my own or getting recommendations. And then I would say, what do I like the subject matter of what I curate?
Yeah, so like, is it, so in terms of curation, what are you looking for? Is it like, when you see something, is it more about what it looks like? Is it about the backstory, the feeling it evokes in you? Like, I know obviously art is very subjective, but it's very interesting to kind of like know what people are looking for in terms of like the backstory or like how they came up in the art space.
Right. I'd say I definitely like looking at the backstory of the work first, just to see if I really connect with it and if I really feel something from it. Because I've been to shows where I've seen several pieces. I'm like, oh, this looks great, but it doesn't really elicit an emotion from me. Like there's sometimes pieces I see that really stick with me. And then I think in terms of like coming up with themes of what I want to curate, I just think it also, like I said, it just goes back to what you're feeling at the time. Like I'm curating a show for the Berkeley Arts Center in the Bay Area next year, so it'll come out next summer. That's about space, and I really started thinking about that during the pandemic because our sense of space all got altered, whether that is physical space, public versus private space, mental space, gendered space, cyberspace, you know, all that got changed. So I'm doing that show based on the angle of like, what does space mean to artists in this kind of crazy time that we're now currently, thankfully, like kind of in this new normal, like kind of decompressing from the pandemic or whatnot, or trying to rebuild or restructure or whatnot. So I think it just goes based off of what I am feeling, what I'm thinking about at the time, and then I'll just try and see, you know, different artists that I feel like fit within that mold or that I could really work with. And I think that, you know, I try to like have a blend of like, you know, people I don't know, just like reaching out to them or whatnot, or even like, I think there's nothing wrong with like asking your friends, like, hey, I want to put you on. Like if you have a piece, you know, an object or a performance or whatnot that really fits in with the space and what I'm interested in doing, why wouldn't I put you in it? You know what I mean? So trying to find that balance.
Amazing, amazing.
I hope that answered the three-part question.
Yeah, it really did, it really did. Which kind of leads me into asking Regina, like, as an artist, how do you have you found your voice, or are you still looking for your voice, and then are you tailoring it to kind of, in the hope of like giving people like aiding curation, or is it just, you just want to just stay true to yourself, and talk us through that process?
Yeah, I would say finding my voice, especially as a Black photographer, going to a predominantly white institute, that was interesting because the beginning of my undergrad, I wanted it to be solely focused on art and art for art's sake, and not about identity. And then, no matter what I was making, I felt like my classmates were still looking at my art as Black art. And of course, I'm not thinking of it that way. I'm just thinking, this is my homework, this is my concept, this is what it is. And I would say it was my documentary photography class that really allowed me to see what I wanted to talk about. And that was when I steered towards ancestral trauma and focusing my whole work on that and trying to convey that in some way visually. And through experimentation through that class, I've been using projections of either very negative imaging or positive imaging, depending on the shoot. The first series was titled Intergenerational, and that was all like slave map diagrams on my former partner's back, lynchings on our bodies, and I'm bare nude, just to convey that this is in our DNA. And since then, my senior year, I was fortunate enough to have a Black photographer, woman, as a professor, and she was kind of discussing with me, like, well, you don't need to explain this to everybody, like, you don't need to explain this to non-Blacks. And I felt compelled to because I'm multiracial, so in a way, everyone's my audience to me. Like, I don't really try to segregate on who is gravitating towards my art. And she encouraged me to make more positive imagery, more joyful work for me and not for anybody else. And that's been a challenge because I feel like, especially with social media, we are always consumed with so much negative imaging and news and propaganda. It's hard not to want to reiterate it back out there, especially to those that aren't listening or don't want to listen. So it's been a challenge to just be like joyful and to make joyful art for my sake and not anyone else's, but still having that same message in the work.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Like, I know recently I did a photo project on, and I call it Crimes Against Women, and that was just based on the whole Roe versus Wade situation, which coming from the UK I didn't understand, but like, it's not, like abortion isn't a thing from where I'm from. Like, if you need to go get one, you go get one, and it's free. Like, you don't have to pay for anything. It's free. Free. I'm like free. It's free, people. But there's no stigma against it. It's not like telling someone you can't do this, and it's like, well, why are you telling me I can't do this? And so I completely understand how to, when you're surrounded by all this like negativity, you can't help as an artist to kind of project that out there. But then as an artist, how would you say you kind of find your joy? Where do you find your joy from? Where does your inspiration come from to try and create like joyful kind of work for yourself?
For me, it's definitely with collaborations and experiences like this, where I can be with people like myself. And that's been a journey, of course, and like our other panelists have said about collaborating with friends and having friends involved in your path. I think that's very important because without your friends, without your community, you can't really get anywhere. And that was something that they did instill into us in higher education, how you can't go far without community. You think you can do it all on your own, you think you can just like be in your room, studio, like, I don't need nobody. But honestly, it takes like networking and friends that share your same interests to keep at least me going and to keep me inspired. And it's my female friendships that really put the juice in my work now.
Amazing. Mary, would you say the same thing in terms of when you're looking for artists? I know we talked about social media as like the main kind of like platform, but is there anywhere else that you're going to kind of like find artists like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would co-sign with both of them said in terms of like community. Like I have a lot of artists friends, a lot of creative friends who I collaborate with. Like I'm big on collaboration. I really think that's one of like my strongest skill sets, like being able to tune in on collaborating with others. So yeah, I feel like going into your community, tapping in not only to your community but your friends' community, like, hey, who do y'all know that would be a great person to either work on this project with or to include into like a show or whatever.
Yeah.
Even Nohami, I had one of her some of her pieces in like a video that I did. So and we're friends, so it's just like being able to like tap into your friendships, tap into your community, and include them not only into like the showcases, but like when you're creating work, like as a director, like, and when you're working on video and photography, it's usually a collaborative process, right? Like you have a stylist, you have a makeup artist, you have whoever else, so it really is a team that creates the imagery. And like I think the important part of like bringing people on, bringing your community on to create those images is really important.
Is there anything on your journey that has surprised you in terms of the art that you found? Like, we all like aesthetically like certain things, but in terms of like art, like, has there anything that has like jumped out at you, and like why did you do that?
That's an interesting question. I feel like I realized, so kind of like both being a creative and then like transferring into curation, like realizing like my own aesthetic, the type of work that I like to create is very stylistic, kind of leans on like Afro-surrealism. So the work that I am attracted to is like stylistic pieces. But I do also love like documentary photography and things that capture just real life. But I think because of the type of work that I create and I produce, I tend to gravitate to other works that are in a more stylistic form.
Amazing. And the same question to you, Aidan, like, what is it that kind of jumps out at you? I know you're working on this Spaces exhibition, but like in terms of, let's touch on that actually. Like, what is it you're looking for, like aesthetically, and like where can people kind of like understand more about this?
So, like in general, or specifically for and the show is called Rabbit Hole. I love the title.
Yes.
So fun. Yes. So generally, or like in terms of that show?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both, okay.
I'm interested to know about this show, but also like your vision and what you'd like to see.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that something that has surprised me in general, I think, is how much I feel drawn to like experimental art. And like art that really uses the body, so performance, but then also art that was made on the internet or digital art. So just like growing up, I was really just kind of, that wasn't included like in my basic kind of education about art. Like I use art in a very kind of singular way, like okay, painting, photography, sculpture, you know, like those were really like always the top three. Like internet art, I did not know about till college, but everything in college, like I did not have a bad K-12 education. Really there at 4.0, 2 honors, like it was fine. It's just like that the art aspect just wasn't very developed in that arena. So I feel like I learned so much more about these experimental methods and you know like public art for example. So I really feel like drawn to those like interdisciplinary practices. Like I love when I find an artist who's like kind of dabbling in a little bit of everything and is able to connect them all. I think that's really powerful. And then in terms of the show, Rabbit Hole, so for that I'm actually taking a very interesting approach. I'm very open about the fact like I'm definitely type A, like for sure I'm undiagnosed of CD, you know, but I actually have basically been working on the show since 2021, you know, because due to COVID, like exhibition schedules got backed up, people had to play catch up, and I don't mind taking some extra time to work on a show. I never want to rush, so, but because I've had that extra time, and we're really working on this for, it will be a total of 2 years, we're actually, I got approved to do this, we're basically commissioning kind of all new works from the artists. And I'm just like, here's the prompt, I'm gonna let you guys do what you want to do, I trust you guys, most people I have on the show I am friends with, and I'm just like, do your thing. So I have been taking a super hands-off approach to it. I actually like it. Feels kind of powerful. I'm like, oh my god, wait, like maybe I should do this more often. But I think that the reason why I tried this approach specifically with this show is because how am I going to tell you to present a work, like specifically pick a work about space when it's like our notion of space, like I said earlier, has changed so much in the last 2 years, and it's probably still going to change. You know, not just due to the pandemic, but also, you know, racial injustice, you know, injustice like in terms of like the economy, like, you know, inflation, or people having to move, or, you know, losing their jobs. Like I lost my job like during COVID. I think everyone I knew lost their job. Like people were still working. I was like, oh my god, good for you. Like you're like the last one left. Like survivor in the hundreds or whatever. But like, yeah. So how am I going to tell you like, oh, I want this piece when it's like, what if your mindset about space changes like in the next 6 months? So I feel like I've had this very like evolved perspective kind of doing the show, and where it's like, you know, obviously we're gonna have all the work set by the beginning of next year. Like that, there is an end date when I need, you know, what you're gonna present. But I do like how I've had these conversations with the artists over the last, you know, year, and how for a couple of them, how it really has altered, and how like we were thinking it was gonna go one way when we first started, and now it's actually looking like it's gonna be a completely different thing, and that's actually okay. Because that's where everyone is at and where their mindset is at, and I really want that represented in the show, like the backstory through the works. Why did you feel like you wanted to create this at this specific time for this specific show?
Yeah.
So that's how I've been approaching it. It's been very fun.
It's really insightful, and like has completely taken my brain away from what I thought curation was. I just assumed that, you know, a curator comes along and they have a space and they're like, oh, I need this because of whatever. But I really have enjoyed you explaining that you've almost given the artist free rein to kind of present what their interpretation of space is, which is such a joy to hear, because like it's breaking all my kind of preconceived notions of like how to get into the art space and what do I need to present, and like I think we were talking about this earlier. Every time I entered a competition or anything, I just get rejected, and it's just like, oh, okay. But I think more so I'm learning to tell my story and tell people why I've created images, and I feel like, I don't know about anyone else, but personally I find it so hard. I'm probably just such a closed book, like I don't want to like share anything internally, but like how would you say, Regina, that you're finding more of a better way to express yourself through your art?
It's hard.
Right?
It's hard. And I'm not one of those people that can like just promote myself like that on Instagram and social media. I want to be so badly, but it's so hard, and I get nervous, and I'm like, I get in my head a lot. But I would say, can you ask the question one more time? I'm sorry.
That's fine. Let me try to rephrase it. So in terms of like you trying to express yourself in, so say you wanted to submit to the rabbit hole, like what are the processes that you would take to kind of try to tell a story about what you're presenting?
Great question. I would first start off with an artist statement, and that can be very brief, very small and short, sweet to the point. Always having to look over my artist bio. I go to a lot of artist websites that I like admire, and I go off of their bios and try to like, you know, do the same kind of language. And from there, I've been getting I subscribe to a lot of call for art pages and websites, so whatever will be free that I can apply to, because I'm not about to spend $25 to be rejected.
It's a time.
Yeah, no, just take the money. There's times, it depends on what the competition is, where I'm like, okay, if my heart's screaming towards it, I will spend that money, but if not, I'm not even gonna waste my time. Cause then it's like, I lose money, and then I'm disappointed, and I feel like crap, so I'd rather not do that. And depending, I think, where you're at is, where you live at. Long Beach is amazing because of the nonprofit they have, Arts Council for Long Beach. I was able to intern with them. And they have a artist registry on their website where you can go and find and even upload your own profile, which is what I had done. And I just put a few things, and from there they even had contacted me to show some of my work from a photo program I did with their port of LA. And the more you put yourself on these lists and registries and just as much as you can find, call for art, I think that would be helpful, and just getting yourself out there as much as possible. Even just, I think putting that energy out is what will bring it back in, no matter when you decide to do that. It took me months to get recognized, like, you know, so it's not like overnight, it's not immediate. I had applied to the group show they had for photography at the Long Beach Museum of Art. I didn't get that. So you see, like, you know, you think, like, well, I'm a Long Beach artist, I'm a photographer, I graduated from Pennsylvania. You know, I guess it just depends, and like Raven and Adrian were saying, it depends on like your niche, you know, like, I think once you realize what your niche is, then it's easier to like apply for things that you gravitate to.
Okay, let's like bring it right back to basics. Like, how do you even go about writing an artist statement?
Okay.
I still don't know. I'm still like, every time I enter something, I just make it up. I'm like, oh, maybe that's pretty good. So I have no idea, but it's just like, you know, I'm just like throwing spaghetti on the wall. It's just like whatever sticks. Like.
Okay. That's definitely, like, I would say it's your little photo essay.
Okay.
So it can be, it's usually like 250 words. I know, right? The project can be literally just about the concept. It can be about your breakdown of your shoot. So like you could explain, I had this idea, I literally break down the whole shoot day. This is how the shot was, write down any notes you had, any thoughts, experience, takeaways. Like for the intergenerational series I did, my whole thing was like, this is about intergenerational trauma. It's a study of epigenetics, which is actually a thing where trauma throughout our daily lives can affect us and be stored in the body and be carried and passed down. So, you know, it depends on your series and your project, because if you have a lot of research, that can go into the the statement. But I keep it short and sweet to the point.
Okay. Good tips. And then questions to you both. In terms of the artist statement, is that something that you go to first, or is it like the work you look at first? Like, how would you describe your process of like choosing artists for specific projects?
That's fine. No, you're fine. So I can kind of, I'll actually separate this ways for my magazine and then for curating. So I'd say for my magazine, I really try and have a specific theme. Like right now, I actually am working on one about photography, so trying to figure that out. I might hit you with that.
Yes.
Just put you on right now. So I have it like, and I did an issue that actually just premiered. So I'm really doing this two back to back. Oh my god! So this one, so I'll actually talk more about like the one that just released a couple weeks ago. That one was called November. You know, kind of about like midterm elections and artists and art organizers that are really going for their practices are centered on like what is creative activism and like social justice. So I think just essentially I just try to find people that work, you know, within that realm. So for that I had specifically Whitney Bradshaw. There's this amazing photography project called Outcry, which is up at the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Archive, BAMFA. And I was looking at BAMFA's website, so that's how I found out about it. I was like, ooh, that's really great. Where she has these like scream sessions and photographs like women screaming, and kind of represents, I think, what a lot of women have been feeling, especially due to Roe v. Wade. She's been doing this project since 2018.
Wow.
So I really connected with that. Then I had Anissa Vangar, who's a curator for Freedoms, and I'm in my master's course at USC. Taylor Brock is also for Freedoms curator. So she introduced me to Anissa, and I was like, I think Anissa would be a really good fit for this. So that's been really great. Then I had Angie Chandler, who's a cultural arts strategist, and she and I followed her on Instagram. She's worked at CAM, and I really like this project she did, like about culture mapping in San Diego. And then Alicia Escott, who works in the Bay Area, who does a lot of work surrounding kind of like environmental justice, but she also co-founded 100 Days Action, which is an arts collective in the Bay Area that I followed for a couple of years. So I think just what I really try to do in terms of who I pick is like I'll usually plan the issues out. Honestly, sometimes even like a year in advance. Like I'll have the theme, and then I'll just have a rotating list. Sometimes I'll take someone off, or I'll add someone in, or I'll have like a group A, group B list of who I want to invite. I just try and track it in that way. But I just essentially like what we kind of talked about with like social media and like websites and going to galleries. Like I just try and keep a mental list, or I'll just like the Notes app on the iPhone is the best thing ever.
Yes.
It's my favorite app. Everyone's like, my favorite app is like Twitter or this or that or Snapchat. I'm like, no, it's the Notes app. It's like my to-do list. Like, yes. So that's how I keep it tracked. And then I'd say for curating, I think it's kind of a similar process, but yeah, I'll just really try and like, go to shows, see who would fit. It's also, I think it depends on what the art space, also like what their capabilities are. Like for the Berkeley Art Center show, that's only Bay Area based artists, because the work really has to be in the Bay Area, not really having like a shipping budget, for example. So there's that, or maybe I'm also doing another show for Root Division, and they really have like based on their capacities, their capabilities, they really want to work with like emerging and under recognized artists, So I think it's also just communicating with their team, see what they can do, what their experience is in terms of that. Like I did another show for Root Division, the first show that I ever curated. It was called I Am. It's like little baby. It was like summer of 2021, and like we had 2 loan forms. That was the first time the space had actually like done loan forms, like for some artwork, which was great, But I think it's also just communicating and making clear with what your capabilities are and finding people within that realm of what works for the show.
So it sounds like it's a marriage between what the space has to offer, the theme, and then visually, is it you're picking artists that kind of complement each other or completely different?
I would say complement one another. I really want it to flow. So a little bit more quickly about my background is that I've always like identified as a writer. Like I did a lot of creative writing when I was growing up. Kind of got to get back into it because I miss it. It was really like my core. And I realized very quickly that I'm more into like behind the scenes like production type of work, and that's a lot of what curating is. But another part of it is that you're really telling a story. You are building a narrative within a space. Like I don't want, I've been in art spaces where I'm like, why is this here? Why is that here? And that could also be due to the install, because I'm like, this doesn't really, no disrespect to the artists or what you do, but it's like, this doesn't really, to me, fit, or like they don't complement another. So it's really important for me, like even if the works don't have the same subject matter, like I want it all, they're there to a story to be told, even if you have different perspectives. And I kind of go from like, I feel like I really try and vet people where I feel like, okay, I'm bringing on the best, let me step back and let them do their best. Whether that is me, like specifically choosing a work, or like for the Rabbit Hole show, like I'm gonna let you guys take the reins and you can do what you want to do. You know what I mean? So, but I feel like the level of trust, like you have to build it for sure. But like it's definitely, I want the works to complement one another. I never want people to feel like they walked in and they're like, what the hell is this? So I definitely walked in some shows and be like, what the hell is this? So I never want people to feel like that. Curating is very much you are storytelling. It is, and also the magazine. I've always said it's not a brand. Like it is a storytelling platform, like a creative artist project. It's not like a brand.
Yeah. And does that work for you, Raven, in terms of when you're finding artists to be in TV shows like Insecure and in music videos like Sweetie? Is it more of an aesthetic thing that you're looking for, or is it still the story behind it?
Yeah, working either as a curator. I mean, I mainly work as a producer and creative director, right? So like on project when I'm doing those things, a lot of it's like the team that I'm bringing on, or if we're bringing on an artist specifically to commission for a project, it's like how does the team aid to the story and aesthetically align with the story. So if I'm like looking for a photographer for a shoot, right, as a creative director, I have like a look and feel that I want the shoot to look like. So I'm looking for photographers that align with that aesthetic. A lot of the things that I personally am interested in are also fashion based. So a lot of it is based on like, okay, how does the fashion tell the story? How does like even down to the models, like everybody that's a part of the team and part of the project, you know, is contributing to the story. And so that's, I think, a really important part to me on top of the aesthetic, like ensuring that, like, you know, if we're having someone doing set design, if we want someone to like, let's say like build an office, like I'm not looking for someone who has experience like doing buildings, right? Like it has to like match the assignment. So yeah, I would say that would be my approach, is like one, making sure that like as a creative director that I also have like a treatment and a deck that I can share with people. So that they understand like what we're looking for, and then making sure aesthetically that the people that we're hiring like make sense for that project and can contribute to that story. I'd also say, like going back earlier to like your artist statement question, like I think another thing that's important to me more so as a producer and a creative director is like the documents that these artists share or the creators share. Like, what does your treatment look like? What do those things look like? How are you like articulating your idea for someone to understand? Because you may, you know, at the end it may be incredible, but if you can't like tell the story of your idea, if you can't articulate the different aspects of your idea, then you know, you may get passed on a job by someone who can't, and you may be the better artist at the end of the day, but because like people can't understand what you're trying to sell, then it's going to be harder to get the job. So.
Losing all these jobs. I feel like
you're wow.
No, I feel like it's me personally as an artist, like I tend to just rely on everything just looking great. Like I don't really like to tell the story, I don't really like you to know anything about me, don't give me any attention, just look at what I've presented. And the theme here is about telling your story, explaining why you created this image, and it's such an eye-opening experience because it's almost like therapy. Like you have to sit there and explain why you're feeling the way you're feeling, why you've done this. And like, I don't want you to ask me why, but in terms of telling your story, how would you say you go about, Regina, promoting yourself as a fine artist? I'm probably in the same boat as you. I was like, I don't do it.
Yeah. I was trying to on Instagram like 2 years ago during COVID, and I did a docu-series. It was very guerrilla style of 7 Black fathers and their experience with law enforcement in the LA community. Yeah, it was pretty heavy, you know. And I was like paying to promote it and boost it on Instagram because I wanted more than just my followers to see. And they blocked me they like took down, they said I couldn't, I paid. It was $6, but I paid, you know. And so that kind of tainted my experience of promoting myself like organically. And I was like, screw Instagram, screw social media. Yeah, y'all are racist. I was very heated. And I think from there, like I said, with a lot of call for art listings and things like that, that's what I started to just like pay attention to, and networking, of course, and whatever worked out, it worked out. But I would not knock Instagram. I've kind of gotten over that now. And you can follow, I found out you can follow hashtags, so you can follow call for art, and that's been really cool to now like have that in my news feed whenever it pops up. And it might not be in California, it could be outside, out of the state, but just to see that there is things that you might not find on websites or things like that, that local curators, local artists, local collectives are looking for artists, and Instagram is one tool I would suggest to use regardless.
Okay, touching on from that, do you think that, this goes out to all of you, how noisy of a space is social media and Instagram? Like, how do you find the gem within the clutter? Because there are some artists out there, not disrespecting anyone, but like, it's not very good. I said it.
Like their work?
But like, you know, like I know everyone has to start from somewhere, and everyone, you know, especially with technology, kind of puts out work. But how do you sift through what you're trying to find, the voices you're trying to like, the voices and stories you're trying to listen to? How do you kind of navigate that?
It's a very complicated question. Okay, okay. Yeah, I think that it's just, I go by a feeling. I go based on my gut. Like, I feel like I have a very good intuition. It's like right like 95% of the time. I guess not really, but maybe. If I feel it, I feel it. But social media can only tell so much. You know what I mean? And I think that the work can be great, but can I work with you?
Right.
That's really the important thing. I have some amazing artists that I've become really good friends with, or have had interactions with lovely people, but sometimes it just doesn't work out because our work styles are just not the same. You know what I mean? Or sometimes it's a bad experience. And I think that's the thing that comes with the job, like the good or the bad. So I feel like social media can only tell you so much. Like I take social media as like that's a jumping off point for me. Like, okay, I've seen the work, I see the vision. Let me talk to you though and figure out what's gonna happen next, because the connection I might think it's gonna be there, but then I talk to you and like it's not, or maybe I'm skeptical about it and I'm like, oh, actually this is awesome. So I think that I try and take like less of an emphasis on social media in terms of like, okay, like this is gonna work. So I don't know how it's gonna work. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, that's great.
I think I'm going to answer this question from the perspective of using these platforms as a marketing tool.
Okay.
So yeah, I think like obviously Instagram, all the TikTok, whatever, like are important. I think as an artist, as a creative, to get yourself out there. I think for artists and creatives is really understanding that your work is your business. So looking at yourself as a business person, as a brand, and it's like how can people figure you out if you don't have any sort of like online presence, if you don't have an identity for your brand, and you're not pushing yourself out there. It's like, if you're a creative entrepreneur, I think to expand just like the idea of marketing, like social media is important, and I think again it's very valuable to have an online presence. But what are different avenues for you to get your work out there? Like, do you have a newsletter? What does your website look like? Are you using SEO? Like, do you have someone to help you like do PR? Like a lot of the work that I do as a filmmaker, when I drop something, like I would hire a publicist to get press.
Okay.
Because it's like how, other than putting it on my Instagram, it's like I'm not making work for Instagram, right? Like my work goes beyond the digital screen. So like if I want to get myself in a gallery or at a theater or a screening, like it needs to go outside the digital landscape, and like newspaper, magazines, press is a way getting your website up to date, making sure that it's like, again, using keywords. SEO is really important. If you like are just searching, if someone's like looking for a fashion film photographer based in LA, you Google it, like are you going to be one of the people that pop up? And if not, then it's like, what does your SEO look like on your website? And then owning your audience. Like with social media, we don't own our audience, right? So if Instagram, Twitter, all those things go down, because everybody's talking about Twitter about to go down. So if it goes down and you have like 100K followers, then what you lost all of them, right? So like you need to have a newsletter, you need to have other like areas that you own. A podcast, like artists can have podcasts. I think people think like just because you're an artist you can't have these like other media outlets. Like you can have your own podcast, you can have your own show, whatever it is, right? To amplify your work and support other people. So I just think for artists is realizing that like not only are you an artist, but you're also like a business, you're an entrepreneur. So like, and your work is what's helping you live, right?
Yeah.
So if people don't know who you are, then you're not selling work and you're not eating. So like, you gotta think about it in that perspective. So
I want to add to that also really quickly. I really like what you both have said. And I think also to add to you, it's also about how you communicate.
Okay.
Like even as simple as, do you answer your email?
no.
I know a lot of artists and I love them dearly, but they have stopped their own bag because they just were not actually, or they fell behind, and an opportunity came and passed, you know what I mean? Or it's just like, you never want to be difficult.
Right.
You know, like if I send you a form or a DocuSign, please just sign it. Just do it for me. Just do it. You know what I mean? Like just making sure that you are on track with it. And I feel like sometimes I do hear things. I think sometimes the drawback of working with artists sometimes they're sort of like, oh, I'm creative. Like I'm not really good at paperwork. I'm like, well, I'm trying to get your stuff shown. You know,
Yeah.
like so that is impossible to do without starting about like a paperwork or communication. So I think it's also like you have to make sure that you are communicating. Like I totally understand that like, you know, not everyone can like afford like a studio manager or like a publicist or someone to help you manage your email. It's like that's expensive, like you gotta pay them. But so I feel like if you're doing it on your own though, you have to find some sort of balance to make sure that you are being communicative, because that can be one of the drawbacks of being a curator, or and also in addition to curating, like editing, you know, for a magazine, like, you know, things gotta go out on time. Like I got a launch date, I got certain deadlines that I need to meet. Like, you know, I can, you know, people just talk to me if there's a delay or something, that can work out, but it's like the communication is like really, really important.
Yeah. It goes back to what we were saying about it finds your community. Like you need a community to kind of help you. Like I know that I found like an art writer, and she always wants some headshots and press shots and stuff. So we're like trading. It's like, okay, can I write for you? I'm like, yes, please, because I can't write nothing. I can write like maybe 5 words. And she needs photos, and I don't mind doing that exchange. I don't feel like it's an abuse of like talent or anything. But yeah, it's like you say, like the communication is key, and it is hard being a creative, because like I know I just get in my brain and I'm just like, listen, I just want to take pictures. I just want to get pictures. Don't ask me to do anything else. And you do have to kind of put yourself into another pair of shoes and be like, okay, right, today is my day, my admin day. I'm going to make sure I've replied to all my emails. I'm going to make sure I've tried to get a newsletter out as much as I can to it. I know it's got to be done, and it's like, yeah, really good advice on just the communication.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's this line from Devil Wears Prada for like Meryl Streep's character. It's like in the very beginning when she like walks into, you know, I think the magazine called Runway, you know, it's a movie.
Yeah.
So I just remember this line speaks to me spiritually. But she's just like, you know, going over things with her assistant. She's like, why isn't this person like responding to my email? Like, is she like dead or something? It's like, why do I just feel that so spiritually? It's like, no, like, they're like, why haven't you responded to my email? Like, are you good? Like, what's the hold up? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I would co-sign on all that. Like, being communicative is so important, because you are missing out on opportunities, you're missing out on money. And after a while, it's like, as a producer, curator, creative director, whatever, like if you have one of those gatekeeping roles, you're gonna be like, I don't want to work with this person ever again. And then you kind of are blackballing yourself from the industry, because people are gonna be like, yeah, that person never responds, that person doesn't do things on time, it makes the process really difficult, and you don't want that for you. And like, to your other point of like building a team and like trading things, like, all right, like if you're a photographer, if you have a friend that's a writer, like, okay, how can you trade things? Like I have friends that worked in the editorial space when I was like working on films and releasing them, like, hey, like, you write for this platform, like, can you help put me on or whatever? Just like building those teams, tapping into your network, because if it's something that you can't do yourself, then I'm sure there's a plethora of people who are out there to support you and can help you build your business.
Yeah. One thing I would say as well is I find it really hard to ask for help. And what I have found is that when I do ask for help, it's really hard when, like, I don't mind if people say no, but when people make it difficult and I have to ask 2 and 3 times, I'm like, please don't make me ask again. Like, it really was so hard to ask for the first time. Do you have any tips for kind of overcoming that, or you just have to put yourself out there and keep asking?
Asking that same person?
Same person or multiple?
I feel like you gotta ask somebody to help you multiple times, and they're not the person to ask. Yeah, they're gonna, you have a deadline. If you put in money towards your thing, it's like you're losing money on yourself, because it's like they're holding your back, they're pushing back your deadline because you're not being responsive. I'd rather ask somebody else who I know is going to be on it. Yeah, I mean, I wanted you maybe because you're my friend or because you have certain accolades, but like you're hindering my project. So I'd rather keep it pushing and find somebody else.
Okay. So as we kind of wrap this up and kind of go into kind of Q&A, do you have any kind of like hidden gems, last minute tips for kind of how, if someone wants to get into curation or become a fine artist or kind of become a creative director, do you have any like top tips or gems that you can kind of share with us? Go.
I feel like for a lot of Black people that I know, or just POC in general, I think that there is such a beautiful community of people starting their own spaces, and starting their own projects, and starting their own brands, and promoting themselves. Like, you know, like that entrepreneurial spirit. Like my dad, for example, started his own law firm, which he's been running since, you know, before I was even born, and it's, you know, incredible. And I think, you know, my mom was starting an independent art practice, and I think that sometimes there isn't enough of an emphasis in the larger like world of like creators or even entrepreneurs just in general, you know, that really created their own spaces. And a lot of times that stems from like as a Black woman, like I have to create the opportunities because they're not there for me, or you know, it's not designed for me to like move on up, you know, and it can be really frustrating. But let me take that passion and put it into something that I know that I want to do. So let me put it out here and do it in my own way, in a way that works, you know, for me. It was like doing my magazine, like I don't get paid for that. And that's actually totally fine, because it's a passion. I don't make capital for that, but I'm not losing any capital, you know, and it is a great way for me to, and it's like to, you know, have this platform for artists to tell their stories. And it leads to other opportunities though. I think that's the thing. Like, you know, there's always, like, I get paid like in, not directly from, but like in other ways, you know. Like I am a director of communications, also for Art Acres, which is an art land conservation nonprofit, and I was able to get the opportunity because I became really good friends with Taylor Nellen, who is an artist conservationist, also co-founded the Museum of Contemporary Art LA's Environmental Council, and she participated in Girls Night. And she actually does not do a lot of press, and I just reached out through Mocha. You couldn't even find her email, you know, online, you know, and because she found the Environmental Council and she saw my magazine and looked at some prior issues and was just like, there's just such a genuine feel to this, because I don't run it from the perspective of like, this is a brand. No disrespect to anyone that does that for their business, but I just like, you have to find a way that makes it work for you in a way that makes you feel comfortable. Like kind of to touch on what we were talking about earlier with social media. I was thinking about this last night, like, should I do like a social media for girls? I actually don't have one. Like it's through me. Like we have there's the public profile for everyone to see like the issues. Like so we have that. So I have that online. Yeah, but it's like should I do that? Like if I do, like I want it to feel like in a really genuine way, not just like super like brandy or like, you know, like sometimes I look at TikTok and it feels like really staged. Like I've just never been super into that. So I just feel like as long as you find something that you are interested in doing and you want to create that space for yourself and for others, and you know, promote it, and, you know, advertise it in a way that makes you feel comfortable, I always just tell people to go for it. Some of the best projects I've seen are ones that are, you know, independent ventures and people really like following their dreams because that passion is really coming from within.
Good tips, good tips.
I would say, regardless of like whatever creative field that you're getting into, I think like just networking and meeting people and collaborating with people is so important. I've noticed just like throughout my career, whether it's like in the more corporate American space or the things I do on the side, a lot of the successes that I've had is like collaborating with people, reaching out to people for like virtual coffee dates, and just people that I admire. It doesn't have to be like, oh, like, you know, I'm trying to get a job. It's like, yo, I think you're doing something smart, and then like, or we're in the same realm, and I think like it would be valuable for us to get to know each other. And then later down the line, maybe an opportunity happens or something of that nature. But yeah, I think just like the more people who know you and that you can connect with, these people are also speaking your name in rooms that you never would have known of, right? So like pushing yourself to get out there, pushing yourself to meet with people, to collaborate with people of all experiences. It doesn't have to be someone who's like an executive. It can be someone who just graduated. It can be whoever, because you never know like what that collaboration, that connection will do. So yeah, that would be my tip.
For me, I would say, for those that are going to art school, I commend you. For those, I don't think it's necessary to go to college for art, and I think that's what the stereotype is. You have to be a fine artist to go, you know, to go to fine art school and be even identified as that. But I would say the best book that has helped me for my career is Everything You Need to Know to Become an Artist, and it's a yellow book. It had everything It had everything that art school did not teach me, like how to write an art statement. It even goes into paperwork and your taxes and how to write things off, how to ship your art. That really helped me better understand and better navigate leaving college. So I would suggest that, and if you're a self-taught artist, don't think that you can't make it into the fine art world. There's so many Black artists that are self-taught, that are being exhibited in MoMA and MoCA and LACMA, you know, all these places. And I would just say continue to fire your passion. Just keep putting that fire into your passion and allow that to take you. Because I think as Black Americans, we're told we can't pursue arts and we can't pursue creative careers because there's no money there, or we don't know enough about it. But just like Raven said, there's so much more like within marketing, within business, within the media, that artists and creative people can put themselves into. And there is money to be made as a creative person, especially as a Black creative person. And I think that's my biggest thing I would like to leave with.
Wow, gems, ultimate gems. I've learned so much today. Thank you so much for attending and sharing your insight with us. So let's open it up to the floor. Who has questions? Yes. I see about notes. I love this.
I have a question to you guys, and hi, my name is Naomi. When was the last time you guys saw work that brought like an epiphany of like hope, like in creating a new narrative?
That's a heavy question. Okay, I don't know if this is my final answer, but it's the first thing that popped to my mind. I love fashion, and yesterday actually, I was watching the area fashion show, like their autumn winter 22 fashion show, and they had such an inclusive like modeling roster that I don't think I've seen, like older people, trans people, Black people. It was so inclusive to the point that it's like I'm also like modeling is like a side thing of mine. So it was nice to see something that's like inspiring other people, even for myself. Like later down the line, if I decided in like my 50s that I want to be a model, like that's something that's totally possible because they had older women there. So that was just, I consider fashion like a part of the art space. I know there's like some people do something with them, but yeah,
I definitely agree.
Yeah, so like seeing that fashion brand taking the opportunities to push the boundaries, because we are, I think in the fashion world, there are a lot of conversation on like inclusivity when it comes to modeling, but I think that fashion show in particular was probably like one of the most inclusive fashion shows that I've seen in a really long time. Yeah.
And I'd say for me, also, yeah, the first thing that came to my mind was I saw the Henry Taylor retrospective at MoCA, and that was just, I went to the members opening, and I also got to meet Henry really briefly, and some of the artists that were represented in the paintings, such as Emery, who's amazing, and I just was like, wow, this show is so beautifully curated, and the works are gorgeous, and they're in this space of being, like an institutional museum, and as I'm sure we all probably know, like there is a very long and storied history of like Black artists not being included in like, local like big museums. Because Henry Taylor was an LA-based artist, and I just thought that like this gives me hope, like seeing, like cause there are also different installations in the show. It wasn't just paintings, like a whole like central section about like the Black Panthers, like free Kiwi signs, and one's showing some works of unfortunately like Black men and women who have been killed in police issues, police violence and racialized state-sanctioned violence. And sometimes I think that sometimes the drawbacks of museums is it's like, are you accurately presenting works that represent what's going on? The things that we all hear about, and things that we see, or things that we know about. So I just think that that show is super powerful, and I just thought it was really beautiful that all of these works, and so many of these works in this retrospective are included in this space. Specifically like at MoCA in downtown LA, and Henry Taylor's being given such a visibility, and it's really, that gave me a lot of hope for future shows, because it sends a message.
I would say Renelle Madrano.
She's my favorite.
that changed the game for me. I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, so yes, I would say that's been my, like, I was just stalking her Instagram the other day because, yeah, the fact that that image is a fine art photo, you know, I don't think outside of that realm people would understand that, but that is a fine art photo. And the fact that Kendrick Lamar had, like, probably hired her, asked her, worked with her, and it seems like they have a relationship, that kind of inspired me to know, yes, we can do whatever we want as fine artists, get paid, work with amazing people, and have our art shown in different settings outside of the gallery space and outside of the museums, because we're not just there, and we don't need to be there. And like Adrian was saying, we should make our own spaces. And some places where I've had my first work shown is like in my homies' like art house parties, you know? So we can do these things in our homes, online. Just Renelle Medrano, girl, check her out.
I want to add something about Grinnell and photographers like her. I think like that this recent movement of like Black photographers and Black image making specifically in the fashion space, like showing that there's an intersection between like commercial, fine art, and fashion. And this is very unique, I think, to photography specifically, like being able to have like a commercial representation, but also have gallery representation, also have something in the fashion space, and working across all those mediums, and being able to monetize, especially in the commercial space, because that's where a lot of the dollars are. So her being able to do that Kendrick Lamar album cover, and then as well doing like Vogue photo shoots, and then she did an exhibition in London, like being able to be cross-disciplinary in that way. I think like just contemporary Black photographers are really making a lot of moves and showing that like you can be a photographer in many different facets and still get the bag. You know?
Yes.
Nat, we have one question from IG.
Okay.
What would you suggest to get into the MoMA exhibitions?
What would you suggest to get into MoMA?
The Museum of Modern Art? Like, yeah, like, they MoMA, or do they mean Mocha? Because I said Henry Taylor Mocha.
No, it says
MoMA.
MoMA. Yeah.
I do not have that plug. I have worked with some people at, MoMA PS1, for my magazines, people that like used to work at MoMA. So I do not have that plug, but I will say I think that it kind of just goes back to you never know who's looking at your work. So whether you want to get into anywhere, it doesn't have to necessarily be MoMA. Because I'm not gonna lie, that's a big door to walk into. You know what I mean? That's a big step. So let's back up a little bit. Like start small. Like start small, but really, make your visibility present in a way that is, like I said, I always think people should do social media in a way that makes themselves feel comfortable. But like I think it is important as an artist, have a presence online, like you were also talking about, whether that is, particularly Instagram. I feel like our Twitter is not as strong as it could be. Like we really got to get that up, but also just like honestly, I'll say this right now, have a website. Like I don't care if it's a Tumblr, because I have to imagine like didn't know to take the Tumblr part of it. I'm like, oh, is this Tumblr? I'm like, oh, you're smart, okay. But have a website. Like I personally
That's number one.
I get a little annoyed at people dumb websites. I'm like, how am I unless you really got that contact info in your Instagram bio, I'm like, how am I gonna know how to contact you or things like that, or find you, or see your CV, like where have you worked at, or do you know someone that I know, or things like that. So I think it's important to just, you never know who's looking, you never know who's watching, so just make sure that and also that you're updating these websites. So I've been to artist websites where I'm like, oh, this hasn't been updated in 2-3 years, and it's like I want to see what are you been working on, in the 2 or 3 year sense. So I think that just making sure that you have visibility. Hey, maybe a curator from MoMA is looking, or from a small space, you're doing a gallery in your home. You never know what opportunities you are going to get from whoever. So just make sure that you are present and able, to respond and are presenting yourself in a way so that people can get in contact with you. And like we've been saying earlier, answer the damn emails. Please, you do great, you know what I mean? Because I have friends that I love them, but they have lost some great opportunities because they just weren't on top of it, you know what I mean? And so I just think always making sure that you are able and ready. And if you're not, like, be honest about that, you know what I mean? Or, you know, disclaimers or whatever, but yeah, just making sure that visibility and presence is there.
I think to add to that as well is there's a famous quote, I can't remember who said it, but it's a winner never quits and a quitter never wins. And that ties in with when I went to Albert Watson had an exhibition here a long time ago, and I was speaking with him and I was just like, Albert, how do you do it? And he's just like, just keep going. So don't give up. So like, yeah, like I know the initial reaction was like, really, Mama, you want to get into that straight away? But like, have that as your dream and keep going. Like, as long as you keep going, like you're never gonna lose.
Yeah.
So
Also to that moment question, I would say like, I think doing your research on like the who's and who's. So like, if you want to have your work shown at MoMA, who's the curators at MoMA? Who's doing programming at MoMA? Like, and connecting with those people, reaching out to those people, I think that's really important. Like, a lot of creators like don't use LinkedIn, but I remember that Joshua, because he was another incredible photographer, he tweeted about like how LinkedIn has been pivotal for him, and that more creators need to use that because that's where the gatekeepers who are producers, curators, people who are programming events are at. And if you're not where they're at and talking about your work and connecting with them, then it's harder for someone at home to find you. So, yeah, I would say that.
yes, in the back.
Hello, how are you doing? Thank you all for coming. So,
Louder, please.
oh, I'm sorry. Can you all hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. Thank you all for coming very much. So, I'm Trevor Edwards. I'm coming out of the DMV, and so Raven, I think you mentioned earlier about just collaborations and networking. So, my question for all three of you is, because I'm new here, I'm a writer, director, and photographer, and I've been here for 6 months. So the biggest thing that I'm trying to figure out right now is how to find spaces where I can actually do these collaborations. So the biggest thing is I do fashion photography, and so I want to find a studio to where I can basically, create my art and create with others. So what would you recommend as far as finding a place, or even if you just recommend just creating out of your home and you gotta just use what you can, but how would you go about with finding a new space where you could do collaborations with other artists?
Yeah, so one of my earlier jobs when I moved out here, I worked at a photo studio called Edge Studios. I recommend them. The people there are incredible, but when I worked there, what was really great is that as an employee there, and I think most studios are like this, I can't say for certain, but Edge is really community-based. They let you use the studio for free. So as an employee, like, all the guys there are photographers or filmmakers, so collaborating with my coworkers. Obviously, like, a lot of models here are looking for test shoots, right? So reaching out to like these different modeling agencies and be like, I have a space with high-end equipment. I'd love to do a test shoot with your model. I would say honestly, like, especially as a fashion photographer, like, if you can work at a photo studio, that'll let you use the space. And you also have insight as to like the who's and who's, because I was doing like account management kind of work there, so like had an idea of like who are all the photographers, who are all the producers, who are all these fashion shoots, who are at the magazines, and like once I got that insight, being able to definitely like connect, reach out to these different modeling agencies. Like, hey, like I work at Edge, blah blah. I saw your models came for this shoot. Like, would love to like help build their portfolio. I think also pitching it like you're helping someone too, because it's not just like, oh, like I need to build my portfolio, but I want to aid in your models like getting more stuff. I want to work with stylists. There are a lot of incredible stylists out here in LA. So I think finding that core team of like, especially as a fashion photographer, like your model, your stylist, depending how elaborate, like having like an art director, a production designer, and like getting a space like an Edge or even like a smaller space, and like just like pumping out a couple of shoots to build your portfolio. I feel like you only need like a solid 5 shoots to really like build that fashion portfolio, and then you can start sending it out to like magazines or producers to like look at your work to kind of commission you for different projects.
I can answer that as well. So I was in a similar position to you. I left London and came to LA. I knew nobody. Like I had no friends, no nothing. And one thing that really helped me was some of the Facebook groups. And so I went on there and I was just like, hi, I'm new. I want to like do this. And I kind of put up some like mood reference images of like what I wanted to create. When I tell you I had like 100 people message me back, oh my God, I would love to work with you. I'm a stylist, I'm a hairstylist, I'm a makeup artist. And that's how I kind of learned how to kind of build a little community, build a little team that I can collaborate with. And then through that little network, they would then put me onto some of their clients. Oh, I know a photographer, she's great, blah, blah, blah. And so use the groups on Facebook. I mean, yeah, use them for sure. And then also look for stylists, like follow like some hashtags as well on Instagram and be like, hey, I really love what you're doing. Do you have time to collaborate? Do you want to collaborate? Model agencies as well. Hit them up because they are happy to send models. Models always need new images. Same with us, we always need new images. So definitely reach out to them as well.
Especially the emerging models on the roster, like they usually have like a new models or emerging models section, and they definitely want those models to get test shoots all the time. So
All the
yeah.
I'll let you go first. I'll be last. I'm not too into the fashion world, but I'll have a comment. You go first.
Okay. I would say Peer Space. Check out Peer Space. I've used that plenty of times to just do small shoots, and they offer equipment depending on the studio. So definitely check out Peer Space. And yeah, I would work in your own whatever environment you have. Use it. Like some of the best photos you might make in your own home, and you have no idea yet. You know, or even I wouldn't say find all of the picturesque places in California, but you know, start checking out some places that maybe editorial photographers, wedding photographers like to use. Like I have an amazing friend, Henry, who he had showed me Riverside, Fullerton, and they had these amazing, you know, flower fields that I had no idea of. And so, like, depending on who your friends are too, and if you have a lot of photography friends, they should have some locations to offer and suggest.
And I think also just to add on to that, definitely pay attention to like open calls as well as specifically like residencies that provide like studio spaces and whatnot. And also I think it's also about being realistic like with your budget. Like if you can't afford to get, you know, your own like studio space or rent it out or whatnot, but you are able to in your home, there is literally like no shame in doing that. Like I have so many friends. I know so many artists that work out of their home, you know, whether it's their garage or their living room or even their bedroom, you know, just finding ways to make it work for you. There's also, I know, like other like studio spaces where it really is like community based and like they have the studio space, but also like gallery settings like within there, like they all like friends, like talk to one another, like help each other out. So yeah, I just think like reaching out to your community, but also, you know, making sure that you're really paying attention. Open calls and whatnot, like I think Hyperallergic, you know, posts like something like, you know, every month, like these are the artists, like updated deadlines and stuff, like Artist Falls and or Arts for LA, like you know things like that. So paying attention to those listings for sure.
Half my portfolio was shot in my house, literally when I first got here, because I didn't know any studios. And
Yeah, so did
I had one plain wall. I would just set everything up there, and yeah. So.
Yeah, another studio is of one of our exhibitors here, K-State Studios.
Yes.
She has, I can send it to you, but she has a studio. She just opened up a couple months ago.
Okay.
Arts District, really nice. So like just being in spaces like this, connecting with other people, this is the first step.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I got some on IG.
Oh yeah, come on. Hi.
Regina, how did you all of you guys, how did you all find your artistic style? But I guess it would be more so, I guess, to you as well, because you're the finalist.
I guess for me, that was actually something that I actively sought. I felt as though, as a director and a creative director, that in order for people to find me and book me, like similar to what I was saying earlier as a producer, it's like if I have a concept or whatever, like I'm hiring people who aesthetically line up for that concept. So I wanted to make sure that I had developed a certain aesthetic so that when people are reaching out to me, they know exactly what they're looking for and what they're getting. So I don't know like exactly how I developed it, but I know it was very, very intentional. Like the moment I graduated college, I was like, I really want to focus on finding what my aesthetic style is. I know like a lot of the things I like is very soft. I do like high fashion imagery and I do like images that show the diaspora. I do like very feminine kind of imagery. But I also think like as an artist and creative, it's always hard to like describe like the different nuances in like your image making. Like, you know, I like high contrasted, super saturated image. Like I don't say that, but but like being able to like, I don't know, figure out like some people do have like a very like highly like colorful like image portfolio, and that's really distinctive to their style. That's not me specifically. Like I do like color, but I'm not like one of those like. There's a photographer, Lawrence Giassi, I think. His images are very, very colorful, very, very vibrant. But yeah, I think it's something that you develop over time after like just going out in the world, seeing what images you're attracted to, seeing what type of, and it doesn't even have to just be photography, like all the architecture, interior design, fashion, all those different things. Like I was in a group called Scope of Work in New York, and as I was building like my portfolio, I didn't have enough work, so they recommended me doing like a mood board section on my portfolio, and was like put other things outside of like photography. So I like put like nail art, architecture, interior design to like get people to understand what my aesthetic was, until my portfolio built itself. I didn't need that mood board section. But yeah.
Then I can answer. Also for the perspective of my magazine, because I do the design and layout for it. And I had, when I was in high school, I restarted our literary magazine club, and so I would also do the design for that. And I remember I did our first, like all of our issues, actually, I did all that on like Microsoft Word, actually, ironically, and I taught myself how to do like Adobe Photoshop, and then I later learned like InDesign, and then for my magazine, I've always used a Canva design, which I really love, and I think that the way that I kind of figured out my aesthetic was like, I grew up like subscribing to like American Girl magazine, like 17 magazine, I would read like, you know, Teen Vogue, like Elle, whatnot, like, and just really, you know, looking at different magazines and seeing how they are laid out and then trying to find my own style. You know, I think it's also something that evolves over time, like Raven said. I think that from where I'm at now, I definitely try to make, you know, have a really even distribution of like different photos, like the photos and then the text. So if it was like too many words or like too many photos, you're just really trying to have a balance. Even just going from like the color pages that I'm choosing, or what am I choosing for the cover, which will gonna pop and make people think, oh, like I want to read this. Mm-hmm. So just finding something that I think will cause people to connect with my vision.
I'd say for me, it's very relative to like just my life and what, like I said before, I was really encouraged by my former professor, Lacey Lennon, to find and make work that made me happy and was just around joy and life, not negativity or anything like that in regards to racial identity. And from there, I kind of stepped back from the photography, you know, like rules, you know, guidelines of what we're supposed to fall in. And I said, well, let me start playing. And I think playing has really helped me develop my artistic style, because that was when I started juxtaposing 70s wallpaper I found off of Etsy, just things like that. I was like, I'm gonna just do whatever. And I really gravitated towards like funk and the 70s and psychedelic art and things like that. So I was juxtaposing like formal images with projection of me and my subjects, and then putting that on top of the wallpaper and just playing and saying like, okay, this is making me feel good when I look at it, so I'm gonna say it's done. And I feel weird, and that's a great question, whoever asked that, just because, you know, as a photographer, I think we're very used to just formal pictures, which is fine, it's beautiful. But my work feels a little untraditional in that way, and so I'm like, well, people, are they gonna still consider me a photographer, you know? Because now people are like, I love your graphic designs and your drawing. I'm like, that's not drawing, that's all photo. Like, yeah. So, yeah, that's quite the answer to that.
can help you identify, like, okay, what is my aesthetic? So that also when you are writing your artist statement or doing things that like you're able to like articulate it because you took a step back and really like observe your work and analyze your work and you found those things.
And ask other people to look at your work. Like my cousin wrote my bio because I just didn't know how to explain my work. I was like, I have all these pictures. They look really nice, but what does it say to you? And he works in fashion as well. And he wrote this most perfect statement. I was just like, oh, okay. So I've been running with that for so long. So yeah, like if you're trying to like find your voice, and I know a lot of people have said to me, how did you develop your style? And I was just like, I just kept doing the same thing over and over again. And I liked it, I enjoyed it. So as I'm taking photographs, I know what I like to see, and that I think has developed my style as well.
We got one last question. Are there any misconceptions of being a fine artist?
That's a good question. I don't know if you guys can.
I have one. I'm not a fine artist. I'm always gonna really quick. I'm not a maker, like in that sense. I'm a creative, but I think that a big misconception of this is something that I often grew up hearing, just like, oh well, artists don't make any money. Like artists are just poor, and it's like, okay, but why do you think they don't make any money? Like, are you actually getting paid for the labor and the services that you are putting in? I don't know if anyone here knows or remembers what happened at the Whitney Museum about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
In regards to that show that they were.
Yeah. They were using, I think
They
they were using their work
I mean,
without.
I think it wasn't just about photography though. I think it was like a wide range of artworks. So basically, they had bought like prints of artworks that were being sold at a much lower price to support bail funds. During like the protests that were happening in December 2020. So they did not go to the artists directly and buy them at the normal or scaled price, and then they emailed them 3 weeks before they got all these works to put them in a show that the artists didn't know they were going to be a part of, and they were not contacted about this at all. And then 3 weeks before the show was supposed to be up, the Whitney curator said, "Oh hey, I just want to let you know, like, you're going to be in this show." Mind you, hadn't asked them, just said, because technically they bought their work, so it's part of the collection, so they technically can do that. And they were like, oh, well, you're going to be a part of this, and we're not going to pay you, but we're going to give you like a lifetime like artist pass to the Whitney. And I think majority of the artists were Black and brown artists, so they like leaked the email and were like, what the hell is this? Like, that's not okay. And it's like, I think obviously, just in the grand scheme of things, that's super disappointing. But then also specifically in this time of like, we've all been in this pandemic, and this was when like there were no vaccines; those were still being figured out. So we're literally all kind of still in lockdown. But we've also had these protests where we're all like being really open about like injustices that we have faced as like particularly as like Black people, BIPOC, whatnot. And then you're in a lot of museums are really getting called out like in this time frame of summer 2020, and then it's like, oh, you're doing it again. Like,
right.
you clearly did not listen to what the whole internet has been saying. But that's also part of the problem, that you think like it's a museum as big as it is the freaking Whitney Museum of American Art.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me that you don't want to correctly buy the works? Because that was incorrect. I'll say right now, that was incorrect. That's not the way to do things. And I'm not even a collector, or I don't have an institutional job. And even I know that. But also then to have the audacity, it's like you didn't even ask them.
Yeah.
You told them, and you weren't going to pay them. And that's part of the thing, that the trope of, oh, well, artists don't make any money. I'm like, yeah, because they're not getting paid. Like, I remember when I did my first show, the I Am show at Root Division, I had some of the artists like crying, like thankful. They're like, oh yeah, like I got paid like a good amount. And I was like, why wouldn't I pay you?
Right.
You did a service. Like, of course, like the show would not be possible without your labor and all the hard work that you put in, and they really started opening up to me about how, like, oh yeah, well, sometimes I haven't gotten paid for shows, and I've made like $100, and I just think that, and I know, like, that's entirely ridiculous. I know a lot of artists who have to have like, 2-3 jobs just to like stay afloat, and pay their bills. So I think that is a misconception about a lot of artists and makers and fine artists, like, oh, like, just immediately go into like that trope of like artists always poor instead of going into like I said, why are they maybe not making as much money as they definitely should be?
Yeah, I think another one as well is, especially my understanding of it, was that you had to be dead to make money. Like all artists.
You're saying, yeah.
Yeah, and then I know that the first time I went to Art Basel in Miami, I went to every other show except the main one, because I went to I think the main one, I didn't go in there, but it has all the Picassos and the Candos in it. I was just like, these people are dead. I don't really care about these people. No offense. But I wanna go and experience art that is, you know, here, it's present, it's like transforming, it's like forward thinking. And so that's one of the misconceptions I had about art was, oh, I will make art and then when I die it will sell. And it's like, no.
I think, I had said it earlier, but just the misconception that you have to go to art school to be recognized as a fine artist, I don't think that's true. And of course, it took me being outside of school to see that because, you know, especially going to a predominantly white institute, they didn't show us enough contemporary black artists. And they were showing us all dead artists or, you know, all the greats, and that's fine, but I feel ignorant to my own peers, you know, and that feels off. Like, you know, it's just very wrong in that aspect when they say, well, meet other artists, network. Well, how am I supposed to do that if you're not showing me and I'm paying all this money to go to the school, but I have to do the extra work, you know, and I feel like because of that, that's why I don't mind, or, you know, I don't judge anyone that doesn't go to college because I know that you can make it any way you want to, you know. And from there, I've seen on Instagram so many amazing African artists that are iPhone photographers, you know, and it's like, that's something they're not going to teach you at school. They're going to tell you to do the whole, you know, shebang, but you could be making work off your iPhone, like, and get hired for the work off your iPhone. So I just say that to say, like, fine art, I think when people don't know what that word is or that term, they think more commercial and editorial. And if you do go that route for education, for higher education, there is a fine line between commercial and fine art where it's very subtle, and I think the work in this exhibition can prove, like, you'll know when you see like a fine art photo compared to the shot you're going to get in Vogue. And Vogue is still amazing, fashion photography is amazing, but it's that subtlety that if you want to be recognized in that term, I would try to go through those avenues and find more poetic ways of showing still an immaculate photograph, but in maybe slightly different perspective.
Amazing.
One last question.
One last question.
Oh, right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It was misconceptions.
Yes, yes.
I would say specifically for Black artists, I feel like both Black artists and people who tend to critique Black art have this misconception that like Black artists weren't here from like the beginning. Like we like to talk about, and ourselves included, like yes, you may not see a lot of us in mainstream media, but Black people have been creating art since forever. We may not have like called it art, like African art was a communal thing, right? There was no singular genius. That's more of a Eurocentric ideology of like you have this one artist. Prior to that, it was like we are all making work together, whether it's like some sort of festival or celebration and people are wearing masks and dancing and costume. That was a community thing, and all of those things were art. So I think it's a disservice on us to even articulate the fact that like, oh, I haven't seen Black artists do X, Y, Z, because again, Black people are also like one of the first human beings on this planet, so how can there not have ever been a Black person creating art before you? So I think as a Black artist, that's a misconception on ourselves that we need to like correct, and for people outside of us, other communities, when they're talking about Black art, needing to understand that like we've been doing this, again, as the first human beings on this planet, like it's impossible for us not have been doing this. So yeah.
Okay. The last question, I think this is a really good question as far as the social media aspect. if you complete a project that you know you want in a exhibition or gallery space, how much of it do you share on social media before it lands somewhere? If you share it online at all.
I'm so paranoid.
Someone's gonna steal it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. The screenshot, you know, I love screenshot, but at the same time, at least I haven't copywritten all my work, so I get very paranoid about posting. I'm sorry. I don't have to be that paper but I'm not gonna just post something I worked so hard for, and it may never happen, but that's just my paranoid conspiracy brain, that someone's gonna take it and claim it as their own, and maybe put it on a shirt, put it on a product, and I will never know of it, and they will reap the money from it. And sorry, I'm not going to do that.
So, touching on that, someone explained this to me, and I'll try and do my best to recreate what's going on in my brain. But if you have a good, strong community and you are posting your work, someone else will see that and be like, "No, wait, what are you doing? That's Regina's work." So I've come to the conclusion of not being afraid to post my work on social media because no one else can do what I've done. People send me images like, "Hey, I saw your work here, I saw your work there," because they've recognized my style and everything that I do. And also, sidetracking slightly, my artwork that I sell is 4 foot by 3 foot. So it's really hard to recreate. If someone wanted to put it on a t-shirt, you're taking an image, a screenshot that's this big. It's not going to be good quality if someone's trying to recreate it for print or for art or for walls or whatever. So I would be the opposite to you. I'd be like, share it far and wide, because the more you share it, the more people know that it's come from you, especially if you're the first to put it out there. People are like, "Well, I saw that first from, Regina or whatever." It's they'll trace it back to you. That's just mine.
That's interesting, because so I tend to share all my work on social, but I did a photo shoot after I came back from Ghana, and I was happy that some people were inspired to create their own versions. I had a painter in Nigeria who made a mixed media piece, but the thing with that is that if they sell that and I'm also modeling in it, right? So it's a mix of it's my image and likeness. In addition to they're literally recreating a photo that I did, and it was a passion project of mine, so I didn't get paid from it. But this artist who made a recreation of it is going to sell it for X, Y, Z amount of dollars, and that sucks. And I'm was trying to figure out what's the legality around this. Can I make money on it? Can I? I don't want to tell people not to be inspired by my work and not create versions of it, but at what point do you what's the legal around those types of things? Even another artist did a graphic piece inspired by my work, and my friend saw it and was like, "Oh, this is real, whatever." And I was like, "Okay, this is cool," but she's selling prints, whatever. I'm not getting a dime off of that at all. So it's tricky. I feel when it's your work and you put it out there, which is great because I do think it's important to put your work out there. Unless there's if you're a filmmaker and you're trying to get into film festivals, then don't put your work on YouTube because you can't get into the film festival, right? But if it's not holding you back from a museum standpoint, then I feel yes, post it, but also there's a tricky line with now social media. People can see your stuff from all over the world and take it and recreate it, and it's damn, I didn't make any money off of this, but now this person is happy, but also I want my money too. So
I feel probably the way I can answer it from a curatorial perspective is that I feel again it's about comfortability. I feel if you want to post that, do that, on your social media, or maybe you want to just do it on your website or post maybe little sneak peeks of it. I feel if you want to copyright your work or make sure you have a watermark, I feel there's nothing wrong with that. I don't get deterred if I see a work and it has a watermark on it. I get it. That's totally fine. I've sometimes had artists, privately, so that have a relationship with send me stuff oh hey I'm working on this right now, I want you to check it out, just to get your feedback, or just put it on your radar, or if someone that would be interested in maybe something like this. So I think it goes back to comfortability, but it's definitely easier for the curator to see the most recent works. Like I said, if I see a website that hasn't been updated in 2 or 3 years, I'm already low-key over it. Cause it's like, why has it not been updated in 2 or 3 years? Like, really, you good? Like, like, you know, like, okay? Like, you know, so I feel like if you, as long as there's some form of updates as to what you are currently working on, especially if there's been like maybe a major shift like in your practice or whatnot, then like that is definitely preferred from the curatorial standpoint. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time and for joining us on this panel. I hope everyone enjoyed it, learned something. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. We're going to have a little networking event. We've got some wine. You can take a look at all the images that are part of the Black Women's Talk